Welcome back. Welcome back. So I went ahead and started recording now. So when we start hearing from Anna, you can go back and watch this presentation again. So thanks for spending time with each other. I love that so many people are valuing the possibilities are better than answers. That's great. And I hope that also makes you feel like your ideas and your thoughts belong here, and they are valuable, and we want to hear them. So I hope that's something like that. Also interesting, if you're seeing the poll results, that in general, this group feels pretty confident in how to use business skills for their creative career. So that's a little bit of what we are talking about tonight, which is this idea of entrepreneurship, right? And I'm excited for you to meet Anna Powell Denton. Hi, Anna. We've asked her to talk about this idea, like that you are an entrepreneur, that you're a hustler. But what is that? What is that for her? And does that title really even matter in her creative work and in her life right now? What I've noticed from Anna is that her version of entrepreneurship is a lot more about play and imagination than about the QuickBooks or the perfect marketing strategy. So you're going to hear soon that while she is certainly a super organized and thriving, honestly, business administrator and that side of her creative career, what makes her really stand out, from my opinion, is her ability to project the work that she wishes she was getting paid for. And if you don't get that from her while she's talking, make sure you ask her, what did Anna mean by that? Because that's something I definitely want you to hear from. Maurice, what else do you want to tell these folks about Anna before we turn it over to her? Anything you've observed or feel especially interested to hear about?
Yeah, so it kind of comes back to what I was saying last week when I was talking to Diop, is it doesn't really matter what your art form is. If you are practicing it at a high level, I know I can learn something from you. I know that there's things that will translate from what you're doing to what I'm doing. And one of the things I really like about what Anna's been doing is this whole process. And I touched on it a little bit ago, but this her ability to envision and then reimagine and redefine herself and redefine what she wants to do, and then feel free to experiment and create and collaborate. And so that's always something I look forward to hearing more about. So
perfect. Without further ado, please meet Anna Powell Denton. Anna is a photographer and filmmaker based in Bloomington, Indiana. She works with both digital and film formats, specializing in editorial portraiture and documentary photography. I'm going to brag on her a little bit right now. She also is a founder, one of the co-founders of Driftless Magazine, which is a boutique magazine I'm sure you'll hear more about, as well as has been published in some major publications like the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and you know what? Why don't you hear from her? Anna, will you tell us your story?
Yeah.
And everybody, let's do some jazz hands to welcome Anna. Hey.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me and letting me join your group for the evening. I was just telling Anna Maurice, I've already gotten a lot out of this, kind of putting together my thoughts for tonight over the past few days. So I'm excited to be here and learn from you all as well. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what I do and how I started it and how I got there. Please feel free to jump in at any time if you have a question or want to say something. Don't feel like this is too formal a presentation. I'd love to hear from you and answer any questions and things like that. So I'm going to show a lot of photos because that's way more fun than just watching my face talk. So I'm going to share my screen and hopefully this all goes well. Okay, is this working? Can everyone see it? Okay, cool. So I'm just gonna leave it on this slide briefly while, sorry, let me get organized so I don't. There we go. Okay, so a little bit more about me. I am a photographer and filmmaker in Bloomington. I'm also the editor and co-creative director of Driftless Magazine. A little bit of background. I have kind of always wanted to be a photographer. From a very young age, I come from a big family and had a real desire to document moments and preserve memories, and kind of started taking photos at a young age, and then bought my first real camera when I was 16, and just was photographing my friends and took it with me everywhere I went. And, oh, sorry. That wasn't supposed to happen. And yeah, so I ended up going to school for photography, and that was kind of the beginning of my photo journey. I double majored in photojournalism and fine art photography, and I needed a job when I was in college. And so instead of getting kind of a traditional part-time job, I started pitching stories to the student newspaper. I got involved in the student creative arts magazine and started creating work for them. And I reached out to people in my community and was photographing a lot of bands and live shows because there's a big music scene here in Bloomington. So just kind of found opportunities that fit with my schedule and what I wanted to do, and opportunities to get paid to take photos, and kind of started my business in college in that capacity. It was just taking photos, learning from people, and I photographed a lot of weddings in college because I could work a really long day on Saturday and then edit the photos throughout the week when I had time between classes and assignments. So when I graduated, a lot of my peers and friends were all moving to LA and New York to go be creative people and to be photographers. And I felt a really strong pull to stay in the Midwest and stay in Bloomington. My community was in Bloomington. My now husband was in Bloomington, and I just already had a lot of clients here and just felt this need to stay in the Midwest, and that you could be a successful creative person in the Midwest and you didn't need to be on the East or West Coast. So with that, I helped create Driftless Magazine, which is a ad-free independent magazine all about the Midwest. And we publish small business features, artist profiles, recipes, city guides, basically a celebration of the Midwest and all the creative people doing work here. And so I kind of started my career with these two main projects, my photography career and then Driftless Magazine. And they really have worked in tandem with each other the last 5 years. So I graduated and needed clients and needed work. So I just started reaching out to every business in Bloomington and was like, hey, I'm here, I'm a photographer, I'm a videographer. What can I do for you? I'm here, I'm doing work. So I did a lot of work for our local brewery and bakery and distillery and insurance company, and just started making as much work as I can and started talking with as many people as I could. And yeah, kind of just getting involved in my community, making some connections, building relationships, and also kind of developing my niche as an editorial and portrait photographer. That's really what I wanted to be doing. I wanted to photograph people, and I wanted to be working with small businesses who are passionate about what they were doing. So I was staying very focused on that goal, but also really wanted to stay open to other possibilities and opportunities. And so I'm doing all this, and then alongside that, still publishing work in Driftless and creating work in Driftless. And that was cool because instead of me as a photographer reaching out to someone and saying, hi, I want to photograph you, I want to talk to you, which is totally fine to do, and I encourage people to do, I kind of had a little bit more of a platform to be like, I want to interview you and photograph you and publish you in my magazine. And so kind of creating more opportunities for myself in that way was really beneficial. And a lot of those features and clients that I worked with for Driftless ended up being clients that came back and hired me as a photographer. So they were like, I love the work that you did in this feature. Could you come back and do this project for us? Driftless is also continuing to grow, and we got a lot of offers to get picked up by bigger publishers or have interns come and work with us. But ultimately, we kind of decided that it was a really fun side project and we liked having complete control over it and it being whatever we wanted it to be. And we didn't want to give up creative control and we didn't want to change what we were doing. And it wasn't really about making money. It was more just having a platform to be a fun, creative outlet, to tell the stories and make the photos that we wanted to tell. And also both Leah and I, my partner in Driftless, we wanted to be photographers, and that was our main focus, and that remained our main focus. And that was a conversation that we just had to have a lot and check in with each other and be like, do you want to do the magazine full time? But it kind of always came back around to we wanted to be photographers. So I'm still working on both of these projects in tandem for the last few years and putting out the work that I was proud of and the work that excited me the most, the work that I wanted to continue doing. And by put out, I mean putting on my website, sharing on social media, making sure people got their eyes on. And I'm definitely at this time doing a lot of other work too. Like I've done family photo shoots, I've done weddings, I've done work for insurance companies, I've done work for a whole bunch of places because I also needed to pay rent and make a living, and I was growing my business. I was really intentional about only sharing work and letting people see work that I wanted to continue making. And I think that was a very big key thing for me because people saw that and were like, oh yeah, you're a portrait photographer. People hire you all the time to take portraits. And I got a lot of work that way. So in 2017, I was presented with the opportunity to get a studio. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here because I got a little behind. So this is just all work for Driftless, work that I was creating, photographing the Midwest as landscapes, inviting friends to come take photos with me, having clients needing websites to be updated, things like that. So this was just kind of a big body of work that I spent a few years creating. And then, sorry, I got a little behind here. I was working with a lot of musicians too. That's still something that I really love to do. And a lot of creative people come through Bloomington, so I love the opportunity to work with them. Here's my studio. So in 2017, I was presented with the opportunity to move into the studio space. A friend of mine who had a coffee shop decided to close down his business and needed to get out of his lease. And I was not necessarily looking for a studio and I had no idea what to do with the studio, but when it was presented to me, it was a beautiful space and it felt exciting and it felt new, and it also felt like it could be a space for Driftless. I could get all of the boxes of magazines out of my basement and we could have magazine launch parties here. We could do shoots here. It just felt like the right next thing. So I said yes and I signed a lease and I figured it out. And I didn't have any lighting equipment. I didn't know what to do at the studio. I was used to photographing outside. I was used to using all natural lighting. I didn't have any backdrops. So I just kind of started back where I was 2 years ago and just started making a lot of work again, inviting friends to the studio, learning artificial lighting. And it was work I was excited about. And I think that is kind of the drive of it all, is that doing something different and new was opening up a lot of possibilities for me, and people were excited about the work, and I was having lots of people started to contact me being like, hey, so you got a studio, can we take portraits there? Or I would split time with clients between studio and outdoors, just to continue learning and keep growing and trying new things. And so I continued making a lot of work there and kind of developed this notion of, or more of a belief that you don't need a special occasion in your life to get your portrait made. A lot of people only have their photo professionally made when they get married, or they, get a new job and there's a staff photographer there, maybe you get family photos every other year, something like that. But I kind of wanted to make portraiture more accessible, and especially because most people have a smartphone now or have access to some sort of camera in their pocket and can take a selfie. And so out of this exploration, I created Portrait Day, which is kind of what you see here. And this is kind of something that was really fun to create in my community, where we do it twice a year, and I reduce my studio headshot rate by a lot. So it's heavily discounted, and you just sign up for a 10-minute time slot. You just come, you pick out your favorite backdrop color, you sit for 10 minutes, I make your photo, and then you get 5 photos from it. So it's quick and easy. You don't have to set something up. You don't have to contact me. You just sign up on my website, show up, and you're done in 10 minutes. And it's just kind of this idea of making the studio portrait a little less precious, a little less stiff. Maybe you do need a new headshot for work, and this is a great opportunity to get it affordably. Or maybe you just want a nice photo of you at the age of 28 and you come and get your photo made. So this is something that just kind of was born out of me working in the studio and inviting all my friends in, and then became a really lucrative way for me to get a ton of people in the studio. And word of mouth spread really quickly, especially when I was having one. People would come to every one and get 4 new photos in 2 years, just because they could and they enjoyed it, and it was like a thing they could do for themselves, or they could gift to a friend, or they could bring their mom. So that became a very fun thing that I intend to continue. We did not do any portrait days this year just because of health concerns, but it's something I think I'll always do in Bloomington. It's a fun way to use the studio and get a lot of people in the studio. And this has also led to a lot of other opportunities. People are like, oh, I want to do more than 10 minutes, or I want to bring my partner, or I want to bring my pet. And so we set up another session after the fact and spend more time together. So also in the studio, still doing both projects. Driftless needed some product photography. So I started creating product photos of my magazine, just to sell on our website and just for general social media. And a lot of my existing clients saw some of this work and were like, oh, great, you do product photography. So I kind of started really leaning into that side of things. I started making a lot of product work, and this has kind of been my most recent new thing. I'm working in the studio, using that space, working with brands and small businesses that I love to maybe do a series of portraits and products so their whole brand has a whole cohesive look from start to finish. Being able to offer more to my existing clients and kind of give them a reason to bring me back. Maybe I haven't done work for them in 2 years, and they're like, oh, let's have you back. We'll get updated headshots of everyone. You can photograph our existing product line. We could set up a styled shoot in your studio. Just different things like that. So kind of presenting new opportunities to existing clients kind of became something that I started focusing on, and just also as another kind of service to offer to the community and to my existing clients. And this also started allowing me to work with more people outside of Bloomington. So I started really leaning into working with brands all around the Midwest who can maybe send product to me, or we could meet halfway, or however they get it to me. But I could start working with other brands, because a lot of times I can only work with people when I'm in the same room with them. So I started doing a lot of this, and my business has continued to grow a lot in this way. And most recently, I've started doing some more work for bigger publications, instead of really focusing on branding myself as more of a Midwest photographer instead of a Bloomington photographer. Because although it is really great to be a big fish in a small pond, which I think is something that has been really great for me in my business, there is also a limit to the amount of work that there is in Bloomington. And I'm in Indianapolis a lot. I go to Chicago a lot now. I'm up in Michigan a lot. And I've kind of wanted to become, and hoped that I've kind of branded myself and communicated with people that I'm here to cover the whole Midwest. And a lot of those opportunities have come from Driftless also, because I'm telling a lot of stories in the whole region. And so I've started doing some bigger shoots for publications like the Wall Street Journal. I went down to Louisville in December and photographed the head distiller at Old Forester. And then many of you might know Stuart Hyatt in Indianapolis. He is an amazing person, and he had this project that got picked up by the New York Times and National Geographic, recording bats, and then taking those recordings and making ambient music with collaboratively with other musicians. And so I photographed him working on that project all summer, and that got picked up, and we got to take some more photos for the New York Times, which was very fun. And then 2020 came and COVID hit, and there was kind of new and different opportunities to photograph hard stories. This was for the Wall Street Journal. A maple syrup company just outside of Bloomington had to start laying off their whole family, who were their employees, just because the state of the economy and everything that was happening. Also, my maiden name is Teeter, which is why some of these bylines say Teeter. But yeah, so I started kind of focusing on working outside of Bloomington. Although I still do a lot of work here, I wanted and am currently trying to position myself to be more of a Midwest photographer instead of just an Indiana photographer. So I've been trying to reach out to other publications and just let them know I'm here and I'm willing to travel and I'm willing to work, and trying to create those new and different opportunities for myself as well. So that's kind of an overview of the work, and I'm going to talk kind of briefly more on the entrepreneur side of things, because that's kind of the focus and why we're here. But I kind of felt like I needed to do that first to give some context. So I think over the last 5 years, I have learned a lot, and I think it's definitely important to remember that there's not one right way to do any of this, and we're all different creative people working in different creative fields. And I think the most beneficial thing is just listening to each other's stories and hearing what worked for other people, even though that might not work for you. So some things that did work for me were kind of positioning myself to be a big fish in a small pond. There's not a lot of full-time photographers in Bloomington, and not moving to a big city has its downsides when it comes to the creative community, but also has had a lot of positives for me. And kind of making an effort to make yourself an obvious choice in your field. So I think it is really good to have a lot of skills and stay flexible and stay open and take advantage of different opportunities that are presented to you, like getting a studio or, taking a chance on something. But I think within that, always kind of checking in with yourself and staying focused on what kind of work you want to be doing. And does this fit into it? Do you enjoy doing this work? What work are you still doing that you doesn't fulfill you? And also finding a good routine that works for you. I'm sure that's been talked about quite a bit in this group, but that's kind of been invaluable for me. For me, I don't work before 12 p.m. if I can help it. I like to have my mornings to myself. I like to wake up slowly. I like to drink coffee and read and listen to the news and have a big brunch and let all my emails come in. And then I get to work, and I work late into the evening because that's when I'm most productive. That's when I'm most energized. That's when I like doing work. And so that's when I do work. Obviously, sometimes I have shoots in the morning or things that can't be scheduled around that. But whenever I can help it, I like to maintain strong control over my schedule and schedule my work time when I'm most productive. And then also, maintaining that balance of the right kinds of jobs for you and learning to say no and not taking on too much so that you're not doing the work that fulfills you creatively. So a big way when an inquiry or client comes to me and I have to decide if I'm going to take it on, the first question I always ask myself is, does this client want a photographer or does this client want me? Like, would any photographer suffice this inquiry? Would they be happy with anyone, or are they coming to me because of my work, because of my style, because of what I can do? And so that's usually like a really good first starting point for me. And then kind of weighing out the client, the job, and the money, and trying to always make sure two of those things feel right. It's a really good budget and you love the client. Maybe the subject matter isn't the most exciting to you, but the other two are good. Or maybe you love the client and the job is so exciting for you and you know that it's going to be an amazing portfolio piece, and maybe the budget you wish was a little bit higher, but it's something that you're willing to work with because you're excited about the job and it's something you want to do. And I think all those things require a balance, because at the end of the day, as creative people, if you are living off your creativity, you do have to make money, and that's very real. And I don't want to overshadow that. But I think trying to find creative ways to create your own opportunities and create the work for yourself that you want to be doing and reaching out to clients that you want to work with can go a long way. And then I think the biggest thing that I've learned so far in my short little career is that it's okay for your work and your passions to change, and it's okay to transition out of doing wedding photography and lean into product photography, and it's okay to not continue doing something you once loved to because it doesn't fulfill you anymore. And that the ends of projects should be celebrated as big as the beginnings, and that it's good in to end a project instead of dragging it along if it's not going to remain as strong. And that's a big reason why we ended Driftless this year. We kind of felt that after our 12 issues that we had set out to do what we wanted to do and telling the stories over the 12 Midwest states, our ending was a little bit accelerated because of COVID and our printer shutting down and all events getting canceled and small businesses closing. But we had intended for Driftless to end this year, and it just ended a few months early. And it feels really good. And I'm excited for what's next. I'm excited to kind of have that extra space to start new and different projects and collaborate with new and different people, and kind of staying open to other possibilities. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I have. I'd love to hear any thoughts.
So many thoughts. If anybody has questions, please jump in. I just first wanted to reflect back some of the things that I heard that I really appreciated, Anna, that this idea that you are you're first leaning into the things that you are really most excited about and want to celebrate, whether that's a type of beer or a band who you want to hang out with, or your friends who you want to invite into your space to be celebrated themselves. That's like a real rich source of inspiration and possibility within yourself that you are not afraid at all to just throw out there and see what sticks. And I know a lot of other folks on the call identify with that as well. And that's something that we are naturals at as creatives, is like, yeah, we can come up with ideas all day long and throw it out there. And your ability to let that turn into its own like revenue generating thing for you, I think is really where this like rubber meets the road of entrepreneurship and small business. And the Portrait Day is a great example of that. You have first started with that inspiration and then very quickly understood that this is something that you can tell people a different story about themselves, and to value themselves in a way that they're willing to pay you for, which is beautiful. The other piece I love about that is that I think you said it before too, maybe not tonight, but that Driftless itself is a project that you decided to keep. You did say this tonight. You decided to keep small intentionally. You decided to retain that control for it. And as I'm kind of reflecting on it now, like what it was a periodic release of your portfolio into things that people already wanted to purchase, right? Like you and your collaborators were going out and getting the stories, getting the photos, working with other designers to create this story and to capture stories of the Midwest, something that you deeply love and was a source of inspiration for you anyway. And you turned it into a product that people wanted to pay money for. You were distributing these as products in other places, and other publishing agencies wanted to pick it up and make it into something bigger. And the key point here that I'm getting at is, you've said to us before that project, like a lot of your work, your bigger work that you actually want to be doing, comes from Driftless, or was a connection that was built out of, we have to do Driftless, and so we have to get out of the state to get the story. And so now, building on that connection, this is what's actually fueling more of your career and your creative practice, which is really beautiful. Can you talk more about that, like how those other jobs have actually come from this thing that wasn't a job at all, or was about actually keeping it small?
Yeah, absolutely. There are lots of examples of this actually, which kind of helped fuel Driftless. So like one example was Rainbow Bakery opened in Bloomington, and it was opened by a husband and wife. It's all their baked goods are vegan. It's a very cute shop. It was just like a great story. And as soon as they opened, we were like, we want to feature in the magazine. We interviewed them. We came in and photographed them. And we published it, and people read it, people loved it, people found out about the bakery through the magazine. We promoted them heavily on social media, and then like, we need to update our website. And they called me and they're like, we love the work that you did in our feature. Can you come in and do all of our product photography and make portraits of us and photograph our space? And so I immediately got that job as me, a photographer, because of the work I had created for Driftless. The work I created for Driftless, what were the photos that I wanted to take, because I wasn't leaning into the expectations of the client. Whereas now, although I'm getting hired to do it, and I'm so happy to go in and be creating this work for this client, I do have to meet their expectations. And there's a little less freedom for me to do it whatever I want, because it's for their website. So I've, in some capacity, already created the work that I wanted to create from it, and then kind of retroactively and getting compensated for that and creating new work, but still maintaining that relationship with them. And they still hire me regularly. Their bakery's 2 blocks from my studio, so I still get to do a lot of work with them. And both of those bakery owners are in bands, and they've hired me to photograph their bands play live and to photograph them for their new record cover and things like that. And so just I think initiating relationships with people in your community, and even if it is, I never want to say to do work for free, and I don't want that to be misconstrued here, because Driftless we were making money off of it, and we were putting in the time for it because we were passionate about it. But I also knew that putting in that time was going to lead to other opportunities, and that we were going to get compensated through selling magazines. But just kind of being strategic about it and working with people. We did want to tell that story, but I also knew that was like a great connection to make in my community.
Thank you. Thanks, Esther, for this comment. She says that it's such an important life lesson to stop something wonderful when it's time, and to be able to add space for something new. So thank you so much for sharing that. The other moment that I really appreciated is that what you're doing, like this idea of entrepreneurship. I don't know if you guys, do you feel this way too? Like, oh, if I'm an entrepreneur, I have to be like constantly chasing the next opportunity and like outwardly looking, and I got to know all these things about like business and investment and like capitalizing on every moment. That's like the energy that I think of when I think of entrepreneurship, and that makes me exhausted immediately. And the type of entrepreneurship that I see in your practice, Anna, is about like more about friend making, if I may, than like trying to seize every single moment. It's like, instead of like totally focusing outward and looking at all of those little tiny possibilities and trying to figure out like, get every single thing, get in on every single partnership, what I observe, I think, is that you're looking inward, and you're valuing these perspectives from yourself, the things that you value, and letting that really like spiral outwards until you've created that opportunity has existed in the world, which is just really beautiful and inspiring to me.
Yeah, actually, that kind of leads into a question I had, which is, so when you hear the word entrepreneurship and you hear people talk about you as an entrepreneur, so what do you think that means? And what kind of qualities do you think they're kind of pointing towards? And what do you think of when you think of an entrepreneur?
Is this for me or for anyone?
Yeah, it's for you. It's for you.
Okay, cool. Okay, so this has been fun for me to think about, because although I always kind of refer to myself as a small business owner, and although I have created 2 businesses, I've never, of course I am an entrepreneur, but I've never really identified with that word. So as I kind of sat with that this week, the way I relate to it is that part of my life is me creating opportunities for myself and me making sure that I have enough money to live off of, and that the work that I'm doing is fulfilling to me. And so it's also that bridging of those 2 worlds of client work and creative work. And that's where I feel like the most of my like entrepreneur skills go into. And that might be like incorrect from my perception of what an entrepreneur is. But I think of like the admin and business side of my life, like you absolutely have to be very organized and very attentive. And I spend a lot of time, doing my QuickBooks and, making sure there's enough money for taxes and doing all the things you have to do to run a business, to run 2 small businesses, and making sure everything's going well. But I think just kind of going after opportunities for me has consisted of being involved in my community. And as I said when we spoke a few days ago, like making yourself the very obvious choice in your community or in your field. So when someone needs a portrait, I really hope that they think to contact me just right off the bat, and they don't have to Google portrait photographers in Bloomington. That they've maybe heard about a portrait day, or they saw a great portrait on someone's Facebook profile and they're like, oh, who did she go to? And just getting myself out there enough and being involved in my community and knowing enough people and going to events and photographing them and sharing photos and just being a good community member as a way to create opportunities for yourself. That's kind of, my perception of how I am an entrepreneur.
Great. I did have one other question.
Yeah.
Okay. So So you keep that, there's this like this delicate balance you have between, writing, the freelance work that you do that, to pay the bills versus the art that you do for yourself. But there's something you said that I really kept coming back to. You said part of your decision-making process, you asked that question, is it, could any photographer fulfill this need versus you fulfilling that need? Could you unpack that a little bit? What do you mean by that? And how does that actually impact how you choose what work you're going to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let's say I get contacted by IU to photograph an event of a speaker. And all they want me to do is come in and be a fly on a wall. And I'm not doing a stage portrait. No one's to know I'm there. They just need documentation of this event for a press release tomorrow. It's like any good photographer can go do that job. I'm not, although I bring like my eye and my style, they're not calling on my skills as a portraitist or my use of light or my use of color. Like I'm not gonna have any control over the light in there. I don't get a say in directing someone. I'm not supposed to be seen, So in that situation, it's like, you need someone to just come in and make a good photo. And yes, I can do that. And maybe I need some extra money this week, so I will come do that for you. But that versus getting an inquiry from an author being like, I just finished my first book and I need a portrait for the back cover. And I love your color and your use of light. And I love your film work. And I've been following your studio and everything you do. And you also photograph my friend. I want you, will you take this portrait for me? Like that person's coming to me because of me and my work. And not that they have to be familiar with my work. I get a lot of inquiries that's like, I was searching for a photographer and found your Instagram. But opportunities that value my skills as all kind of like the niche world that I've tried to position myself into versus just someone coming in and knowing how to frame something well. So not that I don't take on those opportunities of do they want me or a photographer, but sometimes people just are like, hey, I need to get this thing done because my boss said hire a photographer. And you came up on Google. It's like, I kind of would prefer to be working with people who are valuing my work and want to work with me because of the work that I do.
What other questions do you have for Anna?
I'm curious about where your marketing emphasis, as far as you've already talked about, a lot of your friends were involved in your growth. And how does the Wall Street Journal hear about you, or where does you mentioned Instagram as well? Do you rely on social media? Do you rely on a website, Google searches, et cetera, et cetera? Where's your biggest bang for your?
That's a great question. All of the above. I think you should, I think people should do what works best for them. What works best for me is I have a website, which is my main landing point in my portfolio of work. I rely heavily on updating that website, posting to Instagram, posting to Facebook, sharing on Twitter. And I also think just as important as making the work, it's important on how you share your work and how you present your work into the world. I think a lot of people create work and then just kind of haphazardly post a lot on the internet. And I kind of want to take an approach of thinking about this photo and how people are going to interact with it and how to tell a story with your limit of 10 images on Instagram, even though I took 50 images at this shoot. And so thinking about the platform that you're sharing on, thinking about the different audiences on each of those things and how it's going to be perceived. And a lot of you might be thinking, wow, that's a lot of time to spend on social media and thinking about this project, but that is how people see your work, and that is how people end up hiring you because they're familiar with your work and they've seen a lot of your projects. So to kind of follow that Wall Street Journal route. To be completely honest, I don't know how I got that Wall Street Journal job, but I assume it was for a distillery in Louisville, and I've done a lot of work with beer companies and distilleries in Bloomington. So I think could have been from that work. But for example, like the piece that landed in the New York Times, Stuart Hyatt had heard of my work through a feature on Print Text, which was an Indianapolis bookstore and creative agency that I featured for Driftless. And he saw that feature and saw their photos, and they referred me because of that work. And he asked me to come in and document his process, letting me know that he was going to be pitching it for publication. And then National Geographic picked it up, and it got pitched to the New York Times, and then that led to creating more work for it to kind of expand the feature. So following those threads, and then, yeah, sometimes you don't always know, but a lot of times people do say, I found your work on Instagram, I found your work through a hashtag, or when you are creating work for other people, especially in the age we all live in, it's to be shared. And so if someone shares my photo and someone sees it, they ask who takes the photo, or hopefully they'll tag me in it. And so I have kind of all my clients out there kind of working for me in a way too, because I'm creating something for them to be sharing and to promote their business. And a lot of people need good visual content right now, especially now that we're really interacting a lot more online. And so being intentional about sharing that work, presenting your client with assets to that are formatted for those social sites, that make sure they're educated on how to present that work and how to share that work, so that the photo that they post of mine won't be incredibly pixelated or cropped weird. And like, yeah, thinking about social media, engaging with it a lot is also helpful. I know telling people to spend more time on social media is not probably what anyone wants to hear, but it's a huge tool, and you can reach such a wide audience, and posting on it consistently and regularly, people are going to see your work, and people will, when they need your service or want to work with someone like you, they're going to think of you. And yeah, people are on their phones a lot, and it's an opportunity to get your work in front of their eyes.
Mm-hmm. We have time for one more question, and then I'm going to send you to small groups again. I've got a couple questions I want you to think about. Okay, I'll ask one more question. And this is actually part of the homework for this week. If you want to take this and make it land at home, this idea land at home, one of the things you could do is ask yourself, what is this? So here, what does this statement mean to me? I've actually referenced this thinker and writer a few times. Jennifer Armbruster in her project called sister.is, explores really like what it could be like if business was a form of art. And like, what does this mean to you, Anna, this statement? A business can be a prototype for the world we want to live in. What's your reaction to that idea?
Yeah, I love that idea. And I think there is a lot of times when I tell people I'm a photographer, and like, oh, you shoot weddings. They're like, oh, you're like a newborn photographer. And it's like, no, I'm a portrait photographer. And like, there is a misconception of creative work not being a sustainable way to support yourself, or like that you have to hustle a lot to be a creative person, which is true. But I think there is also setting yourself up for success and having balance in your life, and not leaning into those stereotypes, and maybe creating the prototype of the business that is supportive as a creative person. I think that's pretty beautiful. And like, yeah, creating, yeah, working to create the life you want to have for yourself and the business that you want to have for yourself, and recognizing when that's not working and reflecting on it and adjusting when you need to, and being completely honest with yourself when something isn't working or you're not no longer happy doing the thing you want to be doing.
Thanks, Anna.
Yeah.
Put you on the spot with that one, and it's a big question.
That's okay.
I hope that continues to ring through your mind. It does for me. It sticks with me. And I'm constantly asking that question too. It feels like, oh, if I see myself as a business, that's a source of power almost. Like that's a structure that our world recognizes as having some control over our lives or other people's lives, right? And like, what does that mean for the way that our small business impacts the rest of the world? Okay, I'm going to send y'all to discussion groups. I'm going to put a few questions in the chat. I'm going to put them in there now, and I hope that they come through once you get to breakout groups, but I'll probably send them once more just in case. Chew on a couple of these questions, and I'll bring you back at 8:23. How about that? Maybe 8:25, we'll see. But I know this can be a time that we're all just kind of like processing some big ideas right now. So just be mindful of letting other people in the group process out loud too, right? If you find yourself really an outward thinker, take a moment to pause and listen to somebody else first before sharing. That could be a really helpful thing to do for your community. Okay, see you back here at 8:25. And make sure I've got everybody in there. All right. Okay. Oh, thank you, Anna. How does that feel? How are you feeling?
I feel pretty good. I feel like I maybe got a little rambly, but yeah.
That's great. I felt really good about it.
Okay.
Yeah. I know it's hard too. Like, this is like, we're asking you to give a TED talk on like 48 hours notice too. And so you did an awesome job. And that's also why we're here as your co-host to make you feel more comfortable and excited. Look, I got my own pizza delivery in that meantime.
Yeah. Sometimes I kind of love just having, it's like you have 48 hours to think through this. And, sometimes if you have too much time, you'll get it done in the amount of time that you have. And so it's like, okay. Yeah. And
right.
I feel like this is also like this was a good exercise for me. And I now have this skeleton of a slideshow that will probably come in use sometime in the future. Yeah.
I'm going to pause recording. This recording will be available on our website soon. Did you see me just resume the recording? I always forget. But thank you all for being so willing to process these things together. And thank you, Anna, so much for sharing your work and your thoughts, and for being brave and bold and stepping out there and putting forward your own ideas. We need more of that. So I'm interested, as we close out here, who else comes to mind, y'all, everybody in the group? Who else comes to mind as you wish, maybe they were part of some of these conversations, either listening, participating, or sharing their own kind of perspective? Who else are you thinking about right now? You can put names out there if you want to. You can say general, maybe somebody generally, or you can hold it in for yourself. But
I think of people from college that are no maybe here in the art world, and it's just not local, but you know, there's a lot of people I think have probably gone off into the business world and left their creative side maybe to just their own devices. You know, there's several people from college and current friends that maybe I should have already invited. But yeah, just friends, old and new.
So I certainly have like friends and colleagues that will continue to share this with, because I think I'm getting a lot out of the talks. But from a like who I might hear speaking, I've certainly from all three talks have gotten some insights and information that I'm kind of reframing for where I'm at in my own practice. But even hearing Anna today, that it relates to me directly on some things that I'm doing, but I'm also right now trying to focus on like higher, like really getting into fine craftsmanship with like enamel jewelry. And I'm trying to like frame that context of, okay, if I'm selling an item versus a service, how could that be different? So maybe hearing from people as well who are, you know, whether they're making a specific product versus kind of more of the service or musician, where it's a little bit different than me trying to like, look at this piece of jewelry that's really small. You know, how do I create, you know, expand a network from that? So, you know, I'm doing some of that thinking myself of reframing each of the talks into how it affects me, but just a thought.
Hard work.
Yeah.
And important work in this too. So you're dead on. Okay. Thank you. All right, y'all. Thank you so much. Have a great evening. And we will see you here again in 2 weeks. So the 24th, which is the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. And we know that whether you're seeing family or just mom's texting you or whatever, we know those conversations come up about what's going on in your work and your life right now. And so we're excited to spend a little bit of time right before we get into Thanksgiving, reframing, regrouping, being confident and ready for those conversations. Are you with me? Okay. We'll see you again soon.
Yeah,
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks to both.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you for your captioning tonight. Appreciate you. Have a good night. Thanks, Anna.
You're
You
welcome.
rock.
Thanks,
Appreciate
guys.
working with you every time.
Yeah, thanks for
Thanks,
having me.
Anthony.
This is really fun. Someone I thought of when you asked that question, do you know Sean Smith, who plays music as Oreo Jones in Michael Raintree?
Yeah. Yep.
He came to mind when you
Definitely.
said that. I know this isn't so much about community building, but I think of him as a amazing community member and all he's involved in with the Big Car and Listen Here, and then how he took that and like started trees. And I know he talks a lot in Indianapolis, but I didn't know if there's maybe some element of if you're looking for Indianapolis people or other people. And
Yeah, that's a great idea. Okay. Good suggestion. Okay.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. We've got your payment, I think, is already processing. So you should see it probably, I'm guessing, within like 5 business days, I'm going to guess. But if you don't see it within the next 2 weeks, let me know.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Have a good
Bye.